Hello, in this video I want to show you two gambits ideas in English opening suggested by Stockfish. Weird gambits on the first side, but let's go deep inside into details. I bet you will shock your opponent if you will test them in your own games. My name is Pavel and welcome you to my YouTube channel, and let's start. So one of the main positions of English opening starts after c4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3. Here's like the normal move is knight c6, a classical one idea that is still playable, nothing bad about this. But we can try e4. It looks like that after knight g5 we are wasting the pawn, because if we will go queen e7 for example, queen c2 and the pawn is hanging and we can't protect this. But imagine in this position, the first two lines of Stockfish are c6 and the second one is b5. Weird ideas. Let's start with domain c6. After c6 in this position, white needs to capture the pawn, because other way I will go d5 to protect it, and what's knight doing on g5 is the big question. I will treat him with h6. So takes, d5. Here, if the knight goes back on c3, I can play for example d4, knight e4, f5, knight g3, knight a6. I want to improve my knight position maybe to c5. It's very hard for white to finish the development, because on e3 I can think about d3 blocking the bishop. So that's not the best option, definitely. It looks like in this situation white needs to capture in d5. We are doing the same. And here two moves are available: knight g3, the main one, and knight c3. Knight g3 going forward is the most powerful. If knight goes c3, well-known idea of d4. So basically black just wasted the pawn, the central one, but they are gaining a compensation. Modern chess, what's to say? Knight goes back, knight c6. We just want to continue the development and say that that's pretty hard for white to finish the development. For example, d3, bishop e6, g3. Looks logical. We play d3 to prevent d3 from black. We want to improve our bishop on g2, but everything is not that simple. Bishop b4, a key idea, you will see why. Bishop d2, bishop goes e7, and we are gaining a tempo, because basically our next move is f5, and while the bishop took the d2 point, the knight will be trapped in the center of the board. Amazing idea. It was only one grandmaster game in this position. White played bishop c1 to make the d2 point free, rook c8, and I will show a short variation: f5, knight d2, bishop d5, rook g1, castle. So it looks like black has a compensation, and step by step I try to move this position with the computer. Black's position starts to be better. Like b4 looks logical to push the bishop, bishop f6. Black are doing positional compensation. b5, knight e7 for example, a4, and here's an interesting situation, because white wants to go bishop a3. We are doing bishop f7. Bishop a3 looks like to prevent knight d5 and knight c3 idea, because for the moment it's a pin to the rook, but still we are doing knight goes d5, takes, knight c3, queen c1, and takes on f8. And it's very hard for white to finish the development, because like on bishop g2 I think I can play rook e8 and ask the position of the e2 pawn, or even knight takes e8 immediately, right, because the queen is hanging for the moment. So it's going really weird. And for example, on queen b2, I can still play rook e8. It's very hard to develop the bishop from f1. It looks like white almost in the zugzwang in this situation. They don't have a useful move. Amazing position that computer says is better for black. So interesting ideas after knight c3. Returning back to the knight g3 main line. In this situation, black's idea is to push h5. Again, this h5, h4 and so on ideas, very typical for our modern chess. If white will go h4, I'm just doing bishop g4, and I have a very comfortable square on g4 for the bishop, and it's hard to develop this one because e2 pawn is pinned with the bishop. So black's staying normally here. That's why after h5, the main for white is go to e3, and everything is pretty forced. h4, knight e2, knight c6, d4 is very logical, because on knight c3 immediately black can think about d4 by their own. d4, queen f6, that is the idea. It's a useful move because we are preparing the long castle, and our idea that after knight c3 we are going queen g6, and we are trying to prevent appearance of this bishop in the game. Was several games of Ramesh Babu Pragnananda, for example, in this variation. The idea is after like knight takes d5, we are ready to sacrifice the second central pawn, and after bishop d6 with the idea bishop f5 and long castle, the compensation is on the board. White's king struggles in the center. It's hard to finish the development and cover the king on the flank. If white don't want to take the pawn, they want to go, for example, bishop d2, I will still go bishop d6 with the same idea. And on the move 12, white can use bishop d2 once Aronian played against Pragnananda, and here the line can be basically the similar. Bishop f5, rook c1, Prag played here rook d8, because with the rook on c1 I think to castle long looks dangerous. Knight c3, queen g6, weird position. So black are playing for the initiative from the first moves and trying to get in like a sort of the wild compensation here. Interesting variation that you can use in your own games and try especially in the blitz. Let's return to the other gambit ideas after b5, not c6. As we mentioned before, in this position, b5 is the second line of the computer. The idea is that after, for example, c takes b5, we want to go d5 because it's no more c4 pawn. And like this position d4 are the way I will push d4 at some moment by my own. Something weird can be like h6, knight h3, a6, queen a4, bishop d6, so weird position, definitely didn't appear on the practice, so you can try. If after b5 white wants to capture the central pawn like this, I think that after e3 like d5 or c6, that is definitely playable for black. But unfortunately the main line is to go d3 in this position, and I think that after this move white keeps the advantage. After e takes d3, I'm going knight b5. Weird stuff, really weird. So white wants to play for the advantage in the development. For example, after takes, I can go queen e2, bishop e2, because after queen e2, the c7 pawn after queen e7 is hanging. But I think still bishop e2, following castle, this position should be good for white. The main line d5 for black in this situation. Takes, bishop b4, here, takes, castle, bishop e2. So basically white will easily castle to the king side, and honestly this position looks like better for them. But to know the d3 on the move 5, you need to know this to find this, right? I think the c6 is more interesting after knight g5, but b5 is also playable. I recommended to play c6 in the blitz games. Here try and bullet. I think that will be funny. So in conclusion, after knight g5 move, we have two interesting ideas, and e4 idea in general is really interesting. You can try it, and please share your results in the comments, and share in comments how was this video. I hope you liked this, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you and learn chess together.